Hello, my stitchy friends. Welcome back. My name is Laura. You found Lala D Stitches, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. Today's episode is a quick one. It's a Pollinator SAL update, and yeah, I've got some real cool facts for you. So, if you are new, our stitch along is In Praise of Pollinators by the Blue Flower. It's a beautiful design, and it's turning into quite a delight to stitch. At least I'm enjoying it. I hope everybody else is too. So I've broken the pattern up into 7 sections, and we are about to commence on part 4, and it's been really fun. Each month I show you what we'll be stitching and then give you a couple of factoids about the pollinators that are featured in that section. So with no further delay, let me show you where we are at this point. So we have done 3 sections. We started in the middle, worked down to this corner, and then we did a random jump over here, which I think was a surprise to some people. But you know, we're just keeping it fresh. It's all good. One of the reasons we did the center first was because it's an easy count-off place for everything else. So as long as none of us made any major glue blah blahs in the middle, we should be good. I just have to say, woof, you guys, that was a lot of stitching. At least it felt like it for me. It was really fun, but did anybody else feel like it was a lot denser than section 2? I promise section 4 will be a lighter load for August. Promise. Anyways, this is where we are. It's been so much fun. I have to say, stitching this sweet little lizard was one of my favorite parts. Something I kept finding things to mention in about the color correction. If you're using all DMCs instead of the over dyeds for like the greens, and bless her heart, the stitching owl, she keeps reminding me, it's the browns, and I kept intending, I had all the good intentions to make a little note about the browns and completely spaced it. So I'm sorry. If you are already done, this will be irrelevant. But if you're still catching up, which is totally fine. I've had a couple people say, oh no, I'm behind. It's okay. Just enjoy it. It's all right. The pattern's not going anywhere, right? Anyways, the similarity really comes in, and you can kind of see this brown for the branch is Caramel, by Classic Colorworks, and it is very, very similar to the, let me look up the symbol, crumb, 841, which is this brown here in our Sweet Morning Dove. So if you are stitching, the only place they come together in this section is right here in our flicker, our gilded flicker. You could find a really close alternate brown, but honestly, even in my stitching here, I use the called for colors. So there's a little bit of the caramel and there's a little bit of the 841, and you can barely differentiate, even in person, between the two. So you could stitch it all in 841 and not mind. Or you could find something that is slightly lighter for the caramel than your 841. So the browns, 841 and caramel, are very similar. Do as you wish. Customize to your heart's content, and try not to stress too much about it, because like I said, they're very similar. So far, I haven't run into anywhere that it makes a huge difference, except for maybe in this little guy. You can see that his legs are slightly darker than his back. I think that's the most, because even in the squirrel, it's very subtle. So anyways, Stitcher's choice. Oh, I guess we're done with that. Oh, I am stitching mine 2/1 on 14 count Aida, and I hand dyed it myself, so there's no color for it. And as I said, I'm using the Called for Colors. It's been really fun. A couple of people are doing some gorgeous customizations in their color choices, and oh, they're so beautiful. They're so beautiful. If I were ever to stitch a second one, I'm inspired. Okay, so this month I will pop up, so I'm just going to point it out so I get it in my brain, but then I'll pop up a picture with the circle around it again because I think that was good. So this month we are stitching over here. So we're doing the vine, the hummingbird moth, the snail, and the daisy, and then our last blue bee over here. So it'll be real easy. We'll just build up this other side there. Are you surprised? Have I taken you where you expected to go this month? There's actually reasons for all of this, as we will see. So our critters, we're just going to go from the top down and start with our beautiful hummingbird hawk moth. Oh my goodness. And excuse me for reading here, but I have not memorized all these facts. So, there are over 124 species of heavy-bodied moths in North America alone, 5 of which are grouped under the hummingbird moth name. They can also be found in their variations all across the world, predominantly in England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland area. They were in a species that immigrated from North Africa and are seen most often in August. They are considered a good omen in Italy, and much like their namesakes, the hummingbirds, they drink nectar from flowers. So, yeah, so that's cool. So they have the proboscis, which you can see in the picture here, but then also in the pictures I'm showing. Thank you, Google. And they are really cool. I mean, they're beautiful, and there are so many varieties of hummingbird moths as I started looking into them. They have the nickname the daytime moth because unlike most moths, which are nocturnal, these moths feed during the day so that they can feed on their flowers. Let's see. Their number one predator is birds. So their visual similarity to hummingbirds is actually an evolutionary advantage and kind of camouflage. So on a quick glance, most birds could, in theory, look at these moths and be like, oh, bird, not my prey. This is called convergence evolution, where a completely separate species looks like something else to protect themselves. And I thought that was a really cool thing. They live approximately 7 months. So, but like I said, the most common time to see them is in August. That's kind of I don't know the words. They're born. They come out of their cocoons and stuff in the spring, and then you see them the most in August time, kind of late summer, and then they kind of pass with the seasons. So that's our beautiful hummingbird hawk moth, and I think it will be super fun to stitch. There's some really fun colors in the wings, and yeah, this will be a colorful section. It'll be fun. Our next little critter is going to be our snail, which is just on the side here, climbing up our border. And honestly, when I started Googling snails, I was like, this is going to be the most boring section. Like, what interesting facts am I going to find about snails? But they are cool, you guys. Snails are awesome. So, they are, oh, I didn't do numbers. I found last month, little side note, I felt very scattered as I looked at my notes. I didn't know like what order to say things in, so I just felt like it was coming out as this like bleh of information that made little sense. So I've kind of, on some of my notes, I've numbered where to, like what order to say these factoids in so they make some sense. I did not do that with my snails. So hopefully this comes out smoothly. Either way, it'll be interesting, I'm sure. Okay, so snails are lured in to flowers by their sweet smells. The pollen grains stick to them as they move from flower to flower. As we know, snails are sticky, so that makes sense. They pollinate when most other pollinators are dormant. So they play a really important role to continue this pollination cycle while most of our other pollinators like bees and, a lot of birds and probably our sweet black and white ruffled lemur are sleeping, the snails come out and keep the work going. They pollinate the most during nights and rainy days. In India, this is very interesting, a research group followed slugs, so not snails, but, similar creatures, so I'm going to include it. They followed slugs pollinating a specific species of morning glories, and during the rainy days, the slugs actually pollinated more flowers than the bees were during the day. So they're very important. These cute little slimy, slow-moving creatures actually play a really important role. Aside from their pollinating value, they also take a very important role in the circle of life, if you will. As they die and they leave their shells behind, there's something called snail shell adopters who come in and adopt these empty homes, and they actually will lay their eggs in them during the winter, specifically mason bees, which is really cool. So they're really, as they finish their life cycle, they create the beginnings of the life cycle for another pollinator. I thought that was kind of beautiful. So snails are cool and cute and slimy. In Washington and Oregon, we would get a lot of snails because we're on the West Coast. There's a lot of moisture, and they would leave these. You wouldn't see them a lot, especially the small ones, but you'd see these glistening little trails across the concrete where they had been. So now I know that is evidence of their pollinating journeys. Okay, our last little bee, I almost didn't look up because I'm not confident this is what it is, but this is a real critter that it could be. And it's very interesting. So we're going to call this cute little blue bee the blue Calamintha Bee, which is a brilliant, ultra rare pollinator from Central Florida. It was feared extinct in 2016, but then was recently seen in the last year. And they were able to track a couple different areas and confirm that it wasn't just a solitary bee, that they were actually seeing evidence of some kind of population of these bees. They do not make honey, but they are essential spring pollinators in the, where is the area? Oh, I wrote on the back. It's a double-sided note. In the, one of the nation's fastest disappearing ecosystems, the Lake Wales Ridge region of Central Florida. So So they're considered an essential spring pollinator, which is very interesting. They live in solitary cavities, so they don't have beehives, they don't have, large nests, which is one of the reasons they're more difficult to track. But they live in solitary cavities and form cocoons over winter, and then so it sounds like they kind of reproduce similarly to moths. They have a short flight season, so that's their life, from mid-March to early May, which also makes them really difficult to study because they're only there for a brief span of weeks. And then they're not in big groups, so I can only imagine studying these creatures would be supremely difficult. They have unique facial hairs that collect the pollen, and the pollen actually gets transferred not just from flight to flight, but because their facial hairs are facial, they actually rub their faces. And so they collect the pollen like this on their faces and then go to the next flower and they rub their faces, which I just have this very cute image in my brain for that. They rely on Ash's calamint, which is a flower that only lives in the Lake Wales Ridge region. And because this ecosystem is so endangered in Central Florida, they consider this little blue bee a species of greatest conservation need, according to the Florida Wildlife Action Plan. So, a very important little bee for this ecosystem in Florida that is highly endangered. So, and I'm not sure, how you protect those little guys, but it's very interesting. As we've been doing these little tidbits, there are some species that are so abundant and some that are recovering because of conservation efforts, and then others that they're still trying to save. But each creature seems to have their important place in their little local ecosystem. And then, as we know from the first month, we know what a great impact that has on our species as humans, and our ability to thrive and function and eat. So protect the pollinators, right? And enjoy the pollinators. I don't know about you, but I have found that as I'm doing this research and I'm stitching this beautiful chart from Janine, that I am noticing more pollinators. We go for little evening walks when the temperature is a little less intense, and I'm noticing these creatures, and I'm far more aware of their presence and their impact in our world, and that's kind of wonderful too. So, for all the wonderful things, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're enjoying this. I hope you're having fun with the stitch. Please don't let it be a pressure thing. Just enjoy it. If you get behind, that's okay. There's always time to catch up. And if you stitch beyond when I'm putting out videos on it, basically, that's okay. Life is busy and no pressure, right? So, happy stitching, my friends, and I'll see you next month.